One of the funniest times I had the field, well, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny when it happened, was we were doing a stakeout on a retention pond that hadn't been demucked. So we staked out the top of the bank, everything was good on that. They needed stakes for the toe because they couldn't get the dozers into the bottom of it to find out how deep it needed to go. Called out the first day and looked at it and said, there's no freaking way I'm doing this because it's just too dangerous. I'm going to get stuck if I go out there. Called Stacy. Stacy's like, all right, well, I'll come back. So we went out to do another job, and client still didn't demuck it and called us back the next day and said, no, it's got to be done. So we go back the next day, and I'm looking at it, and we get about 100 foot into the littoral shelf line, and we're okay for right then, and the I-man tells me to go 15 feet to the right. And I'm like, oh, I guess I could try this. Started walking, mud just swamping under my feet, so I'm like, this doesn't feel too safe. Had the I-man shoot me again, see how much further I needed to go. I was still like 8 feet away from where I needed to go.
And how deep were you in the water at this point?
At this point, I'm only maybe to my knees, so it wasn't too bad. It didn't seem like it was going to be that bad. It was wet, but that wasn't the biggest problem.
All right.
So I stop and get on the radio and have him shoot me again, and the whole time I'm sinking. So I'm like, all right. I clip the radio back into my belt and try to walk and realize I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, man.
So at this time, I'm in, the water's up to my waist now. I'm in the mud to my knees when I call Seth over, and I'm like, hey, Seth, I'm going to need help getting out of here.
Oh, man.
So he comes from the gun a couple 100 feet away, and by the time he gets there, it's just quicksand, and I'm sinking further and further. So I'm up to my thigh, and I can't push myself out because there's nothing hard enough to get around there.
Oh, man.
So he goes and runs and finds one of the construction guys. They come over, and they all laugh. And I'm like, those bastards. I told them I couldn't do this in the first place.
Right.
So they're trying to think of ways to get me out. And they walk out a little bit of the ways, and I threw them all the equipment so it wouldn't get wet in my phone, and didn't want to ruin that.
Right.
So I'm waiting, and they walk out a little bit to try to give me their hand to push me up. Well, that wasn't going to work. Well, this time I'm down to my waist in mud, and I'm not going anywhere. So they decide to bring over a backhoe, and they're going to try to lift me out with it. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's just hurry up. Well, it takes them a few minutes to get over there, and I'm continually sinking. So we're trying to be safe about it because the worst thing you do is get cut by one of those things, especially in that situation. So they lift it to where it's right above my head and off to the side of me, and I try grabbing onto it and have them lift me up with that. Well, it's not pulling me anywhere, so my arms aren't strong enough, and I couldn't hold on while they're trying to pull me. So then somebody had the bright idea of putting a rope around it and sticking the rope underneath my armpits, and they'll pull me out that way. Well, I thankfully stopped really sinking anymore. I realized the more I struggled with it, the deeper I was going to go.
Yeah.
So I stopped struggling. I stayed about waist deep. It might have been my belly button by about that time. They get the rope around me, and we put it on there. They start lifting, and I think that my arms are going to get pulled off. It's the worst pain that you can imagine. Yeah. They keep lifting. They can't hear me going, stop, stop. So they finally stop that. We decide, well, we're going to demuck this pond with me in it. So being as careful as he was, and he was a good operator. He didn't cut me or anything, but he dug all around me, almost to the point where they could get me out, but not quite. Eventually, he got close enough to me and dug deep enough that he dug all the way across my legs to where, without hitting my legs, that's how good he was. But I was able to put my knees on it, and he lifted me up in the bucket and put me safely on shore. Looking back, it was the worst day of surveying I ever had at the time, but looking back now, it was pretty funny.